Hi, it's Katrina. Number 10. Edgar Cayce. Who is Edgar Cayce anyway? He was born in March in 1877 in the small town of Beverly, Kentucky. He grew to be one of the most respected and mysterious clairvoyants in American history. Edgar Cayce practiced everything from ESP to dream reading, and he had sessions with thousands of people to look into their futures. He predicted things that happened, as well as things that have yet to happen, and even made some shocking claims about ancient societies like Atlantis. Many believe he knew the secrets of reincarnation, spiritual healing, and the afterlife. He claimed to have a deep understanding of the subconscious mind, the invisible tether connecting all of us to the dream realm. Edgar was known to be incredibly unusual. He would often fall into a deep slumber in order to connect with forces beyond our physical world. These forces would then whisper to him secrets of the past and the future, which was how he could tell people what was soon to come in their lives. He was also notorious for delivering messages from dead relatives. As a child, he was always running off and playing with curious beings he called little folk. He once claimed that a beautiful woman with wings appeared to him as he read the Bible in the forest. Then, after the encounter, he suddenly gained the ability to cure illnesses in his dreams. Nobody really knows if Edgar had a miraculous power given to him by God or some other entity, but he certainly believed it. And throughout his lifetime, he made a lot of predictions that came true. Number 9. True prophecies. The reason people believed in Edgar Cayce was because many of his prophecies actually came true. One of his visions had to do with the stock market crash that devastated the United States in the early 1900s. Edgar was completing a reading for a young doctor in 1925 when he told the man to care for his wealth because adverse forces would come in 1929. Shortly after, Edgar informed a New York stockbroker that there would be a great disturbance in financial circles. This was 6 months before the stock market crashed and everyone went broke. In 1935, Edgar predicted World War II. He didn't see it crystal clear, but he knew something was going to happen. He said a time of great anxiety was coming and that it would absorb all nations. He also prophesied that the Germans and the Japanese would join their influence, and that growing hostility would plunge the world into chaos. Shortly after, the entire world was at war. During a reading in 1929, Edgar also predicted that sometime in the near future, the telegraph, telephone, and radio would all be combined into one system. Before it happened, he knew that the Earth's poles would shift, and he made predictions regarding La Niña and El Niño weather changes that are currently plaguing the world. And amazingly, Edgar predicted the emergence of DNA technology and understood how blood could be used as a diagnostic tool. Number 8. Atlantis. Edgar Cayce was a big believer in Atlantis as well as the lost continent of Lemuria. He claimed that Atlantis was destroyed in a catastrophic event 12,000 years ago. It happened right at the end of the Ice Age, when ocean levels were 300 feet below what they are now. Edgar said there was a large chunk of land known as Lemuria between North America and Europe. On that alleged continent was the lost city of Atlantis, a place ruled by a civilization of unparalleled knowledge and sophistication. This was before Mesopotamia, long before the Egyptians, and way before the ancient civilizations of Asia. These days, the only thing that remains of Lemuria are what were once its mountain peaks. Tiny islands like the Bahamas were once supposedly the tops of mountains on Lemuria. Cuba also may have once been part of the lost continent. There have even been mysterious ruins discovered along the extreme western tip of Cuba, which some believe could have belonged to Atlantis. There is also an underwater road that was discovered off the coast of Bimini in the Bahamas. The road is a very real formation that looks like it could be man-made. It was found by researchers submerged and broken. It leads to nowhere, and some people believe it could have once been part of an ancient superhighway. However, for unknown reasons, it's now at the bottom of the ocean. Number 7. Atlantean migrants. Edgar Cayce was a firm believer in the Atlantean migration theory, which suggests that when Atlantis was destroyed by a mysterious cataclysmic event 12,000 years ago, its people didn't perish. Instead, they escaped and set out on a journey to explore and conquer new lands. Not only did they abandon Atlantis and spread out across the world, but they brought their advanced technologies with them. It's not very likely that they were advanced enough to invent spaceships and automobiles, but it's believed they possessed great knowledge. They were educated in bronze working, architecture, written language, and many other early technologies. Edgar even claimed that the original inhabitants of North America, meaning the Native Americans, were direct descendants of the people of Atlantis, specifically the Cherokee people. We know they have a rich history dating back about 12,000 years, which corresponds perfectly with the destruction of Atlantis. Edgar and others who share his ideas believe that when the Atlanteans fled, they wound up in both North and South America. They would later become the Cherokee and even the Inca. But that's not all. Because the supposed continent of Lemuria was in the middle of the ocean, between Europe and America, they also fled to Europe. They arrived in Greece and later founded the mighty Mycenaean civilization. And it's possible that they even brought their advanced engineering skills to the early Egyptians. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. Number 6. The Hall of Records. There is a huge conspiracy theory that claims there is a secret Hall of Records hidden underneath the foundation of the Egyptian Sphinx in Giza. Edgar Cayce was a big believer in the theory, and so are many people today. The Hall of Records supposedly contains scrolls, documents, and other various materials detailing the history of Atlantis, Lemuria, and extraterrestrials. The Hall of Records also allegedly contains works rescued from the legendary Library of Alexandria before it was destroyed. Many mainstream archaeologists say the theory is nothing but a fantasy. However, that hasn't stopped people from talking about it. Some claim any investigation into the Hall of Records has been blocked by the Egyptian government. They allegedly know something the rest of us don't, and for that reason, they have stopped archaeologists from investigating the Sphinx. The people in power are keeping the secrets of the Hall of Records hidden because the contents could potentially change history. But here's where things get really interesting. Edgar was hardly the first person to suggest a mysterious hall of documentation hiding underneath the Sphinx. The famous Greek historian Herodotus also claimed there was an underground library at Giza before his death in 425 BC. Herodotus even said he saw the library with his own eyes and that it outweighed the pyramids in its brilliance. He described it as a labyrinth and claimed it was filled with work beyond words. Edgar Cayce believed the Hall of Records to be real, and what's even more interesting is that according to his predictions, there is an ancient Atlantean flying vessel, or potentially an extraterrestrial flying machine, buried under the Sphinx as well. And now for number 5. But first, it's shoutout time! I want to say a huge thank you to High Soul and Kurt C for watching and supporting Origins Explained. We love your feedback, and be sure to subscribe if you haven't already for more videos about amazing discoveries. Number 5. The Second Coming. There have been a lot of predictions surrounding the second coming of Jesus Christ. According to Christian and Islamic religions, this is a real event that will happen any day now. Jesus will supposedly return to our world and the beginning of the end will start. In the Bible, the second coming of Jesus is a sign that the apocalypse is coming. But what does any of this have to do with Edgar Cayce and his predictions? As you've likely guessed already, Edgar had his own ideas about when the second coming of Christ would occur. He predicted it would be in the year 2000. However, it's currently 2022 and there has been no sign of Jesus so far. Edgar and others like him were very wrong about the date, including Frank Cherry of the Black Hebrew Israelite religion, Pastor Ed Dobson, and Timothy Dwight IV. Timothy was the president of Yale University at the end of the 18th century, and he predicted that Christ would return in the year 2000. Number 4. The Dead Sea Scrolls. In 1947, the same year an alien supposedly crashed in the New Mexico desert site near Roswell, the Dead Sea Scrolls were found. They were uncovered in the long-lost caves of Qumran near the northern shore of the Dead Sea. Over a decade before that, Edgar Cayce described an ancient sect of Judaism that scholars knew almost nothing about. The group is called the Essenes, and Edgar gave a significant amount of information about their lives over 2,000 years ago. It wasn't until the Dead Sea Scrolls were found and deciphered that the scientific community learned the details of the Essenes. It's a pretty unusual prediction of the past, Yet Edgar hit the nail right on the head. He said that the Essenes were an advanced society of men and women working together in the desert. When he made this claim, scholars of the time all believed the Essenes were mostly men living in a monastic society. After the Dead Sea Scrolls were found, researchers learned Edgar was right. Edgar also claimed the purpose of the Essenes was to prepare for the birth of Christ. We know they were a very secretive and mystic sect of Judaism. And we know the Dead Sea Scrolls were preserved in their libraries hidden within caves. But we don't know for sure if they really were waiting for Christ to be born for 200 years. The Essenes appeared around 300 BC and then vanished shortly after the birth of Christ, and nobody is sure what happened. Edgar also made some interesting claims about the life of Jesus. He believed that Jesus briefly trained with the Essenes before traveling to India and Egypt to learn from other master teachers in theology. Edgar said it was Jesus' long life of preparation that ultimately led him to his manifestation as Christ, the Son of God. Number 3. Prophecies yet to come. We know some of Edgar's predictions came true, like the Wall Street crash and the start of World War II, but which prophecies have yet to come? Edgar predicted that many things would change with our bodies in the future. He believed that sooner than later, human beings would dramatically extend their lives on Earth. And while we are living longer now than when Edgar was alive a century ago, he seemed to suggest we would be living centuries longer than we already are. Edgar predicted that there would be a great conflict in the Persian Gulf. Specifically, he warned to be careful of Libya, Egypt, and Syria, as well as the waterways above Australia. He seemed to believe a very serious conflict would begin in the Persian Gulf, and that it could potentially lead to another world war. Another very peculiar prediction that has yet to come true is the one about China. Edgar predicted that China would rise to a position of greatness, becoming the cradle of Christianity and a major role model for the world. He did say that it would take many generations for his prediction to manifest, but China would eventually become the greatest hub of Christianity in the world. Edgar also seemed to believe that the height of civilization would move from the West to China. Number 2. The Transcended Race. Edgar Cayce believed that 5 human races were created simultaneously at different parts of the Earth. This is perhaps his most controversial prediction of all. He claimed that life on our planet started at the same time, with 5 individual races placed at specific locations. According to Edgar, humans were either white, black, red, brown, and yellow. The red people were the ones placed on the continent of Lemuria. They were the Atlanteans, and they evolved faster and developed technology more rapidly than any other race. However, Edgar's prophecies get even stranger. He believed in a progression of evolutionary change that started 18 million years ago. Edgar thought that life started when the spirit transformed into matter. He also claimed that between 10,000 BC and 3000 BC, humanity went through an evolutionary advancement. Edgar declared that our next advancement began in 3000 BC and will continue until the year 2400 CE, which is the current era. Edgar also believed that around the year 8000, human beings will have transcended the boundaries of our minds to such a point that we won't need schools or social structures. We will just become a race of enlightened super beings. Number 1. Weird Astrology. Edgar Cayce's prophecies were usually told while he was doing a life reading of a person. Certain individuals would trigger something, and he would get a glimpse of the future. However, before he looked at what was to come, he would learn about his subject's astrological conditions. Edgar was a huge believer in astrology, what some might call pseudoscience. He was big on universal forces, soul patterns, and other dimensions. Edgar claimed that the position of the stars and planets at the time of a person's birth indicated what they were in the past, in a different realm, or in another life before they were born on Earth. In many ways, Edgar used astrology in the same way your weekly horoscope does. The vagueness of his readings made them impossible to confirm or deny. And unfortunately, this brings us to some of Edgar's more outrageous predictions that even his most devout followers are skeptical about. He claimed that soul entities living on Earth intermingled with animals to produce 12-foot-tall giants. He believed the Atlanteans possessed a solar crystal that was activated by the sun, and it supposedly powered their civilization. Edgar also predicted that in 1958, the United States would rediscover a death ray, which had been used to wipe out Atlantis 12,000 years ago. In the 1930s, he claimed that Los Angeles and San Francisco would be destroyed. So, what do you think? Do you think Edgar was right about Atlantis? Let me know in the comments below, and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks for watching! See you later, bye!